Hi there, welcome to the Bonsai Stuff podcast. I'm Scott Martin from Bonsai Matsu. Thank you as always for listening in, and welcome to the very last episode for winter in Australia for 2025. Fantastic. Next time you hear my dull voice, it will be for the start of spring, which brings a whole lot of new, exciting stuff that we have to do with our bonsai, which I love. I really do. And I do genuinely look forward to the end of winter for multiple reasons, but one is that repotting starts to wrap up for me. The significant part of repotting. There are other trees in my yard that get repotted at different times, but the significant chunk of repotting for the last 2 months suddenly starts to wind up, and it makes me bloody excited, to be honest. It's nice to think I can put those tools away for a while, give them the love that they deserve, and make sure that they're ready to go for next time. But for now, it's time for a bit of R&R as I get to watch the trees start to pop their new buds and start to come back to life, and that rejuvenation that they amaze me. Trees, how they can just be as old as ever, and every year when spring comes around, they push this brand new foliage, and they start again. The whole cycle of their year, their life in the year starts, and they provide so much wonder and so many opportunities for us to take them to that next level. And it leads me in nicely to what I want to talk about in this podcast. What I want to talk about a European Beech. Now, I don't normally put dates, timestamps in the podcast deliberately because they're listened to over and over, or at different times. People do catch-ups and all that sort of stuff. But this one's relevant to a post that's happened on social media, on Instagram and on Facebook. So if you have a look, it's the post was done on the 24th of August, 2025. So no matter when you listen to this, you can scroll back through the feed and you'll see the tree that I'm going to talk about. It's a European Beech. It's one that had a bit of an issue in the yard, and I want to run through sort of the last couple of years for this tree and where it's ended up now, and part of the planning process. It's through an accident. The design was forced upon me to be changed, so it's all that forced redesign that I've talked about before. This tree has been through that as well, and it's common that you sit there looking at a tree and there's things that niggle at you. You think that's just not right. But you put up with it because that's the way it's always been, and you don't look at changing things because you're developing. There are ramifications coming along nicely, all the plans sort of working, but you look at something and go, it's just still not right. This tree was exactly that for me. And even though this accident happened, like I literally, just before I started recording the podcast, I went out and checked this tree again. And even now, it's put a smile on my dial that I'm so happy that it's now, I've been forced to make a decision. It wasn't me, it was Mother Nature that decided it was time for this tree to change what it was. And I now gladly accept that. At the time, I was a bit upset, but anyway, let's get into the story, and you can have a listen to how it's happened. All right, so this European Beech, Fagus Sylvatica, I purchased a long time ago. It started as nursery stock, so I didn't grow it myself, which is common. Again, most of us don't start our trees. And if you do, and they've got any age to them, normally they get passed on before you get them to fruition. So anyway, this was purchased as nursery stock, as a stick, like a thick stick in a pot. The Nabari, everything was buried deep, and it was nice. Look, I love the trunk. I love the thought of European Beech. I think they're a lovely tree. Their foliage is beautiful. They're delicate. If you look up any pictures of any European Beech, you can see that they ramify really nicely, and it's just something about them. Just for me, anyway. I just thought that they're a majestic tree, and I wanted it in the collection. So a long time ago, I don't know when. I don't know exactly what date it was, but it came into the collection, and I started it based on the position of branches, as we all do. And I deliberately kept some low down branches, as you'll see in the photos. There's some really, really low branches on this tree, and the tree prior to the work that I'm going to talk through was at about 1.3 meters tall, 1.4 meters tall, something like that. It was actually quite a tall tree, and I wanted to make it a big tree. I wanted this thing. It didn't have much taper in the trunk, but there was something about it at the time that I thought, young and inexperienced. Would I purchase something like that now? I don't think I would. I think I'd look more for taper in the tree. But back then, anyway, it became a lovely part of the Bonsai Matsu collection, the future Bonsai Matsu collection, and it's something that I wanted to work on. So I kept lots of branches on it to make it interesting. At the time, I wouldn't say it was a defiant phase, but it was definitely something where I was like, I don't want this to conform with every other tree that I see out there. I don't want to have like the lower trunk clear. If it's got beautiful branches down low, then I think that this would make a really nice tree to keep that really full silhouette, that full outer canopy down very, very low on the tree. So I worked with the branches that were in place then and picked a front based on the branch positioning, but I always had a compromise on the base, on the Nabari, on the surface roots, because from the original front, where the branches seemed to be very, very nicely placed, needed a bit of wiring to put into place, but the structure was really good at that point, and the apex, the tree came forward, all sort of fit in line. I went, well, you know what, I'm willing to sort of take a bit of a hit on the Nabari if I can get the rest of this tree to position as I wanted it. But it was always a compromise for me. It always niggled at me. And so I worked on the Nabari. Every repot that I did, I'd work on improving it slightly. But, it's very hard. It's very slow, and it never really made it. And the hardest part was that the other side of the tree down low, the Nabari was beautiful. Like, it really was built for that. But when I worked on that as the front, the whole structure of the tree was on the wrong side, and it just felt like it was never going to quite make it. So I sucked it up and I went, that's the front, that's the way it is. The Nabari, well, you just have to live with it and do what you can and start working on the structure. So I basically, the first step for this was just primary branch positioning, and then for me, I really wanted a natural feel, so I didn't do much secondary wiring at all. A little bit here and a little bit there, but really not much. And that was the first start of the tree. And from then on, it was just, working on branch thickening and working on ramification and starting to build the structure of this tree to be exactly what I wanted, except for the lower part of the tree. Then scroll forward to, it was just about 2.5 years ago. There was a storm. I remember when the storm came through, because I was really worried about the trees being tied down, that they were going to get an absolute flogging with this strong wind coming through. And again, I don't know the exact details of how strong the wind was, but I remember being worried and walking out during the night checking the trees. And in my yard in Australia, which is common for some places, is to have large gum trees, eucalyptus varieties of all kinds planted in backyards, which now I don't think is common practice, but for older houses that was really common. And for those that don't know, the eucalypts in Australia, we call them widowmakers, because some varieties, not all varieties, but some varieties are notorious for dropping branches in storms. And that results from the trees when moisture or when water is scarce. During the hotter periods, they'll pick and choose branches to die to save the tree. All about that greater good for the tree. So they'll sacrifice what they have to in order to keep surviving. And often those branches dry out over a period of time, can be years, very, very long time. They'll even stay dead in the tree. Sometimes they're not dead. Sometimes they just don't, they're not quite as strong as what they should be. And anyway, they wait for a storm to come along, and that wind gets up and the tree starts to rattle and shake, and all of a sudden the branch comes down. It's fine if it's out in the bush and you're not camping under it, but in a backyard, I'm pretty fastidious with the garden trees that we have, and I do get in arborists to maintain them, so it's not like I've been lax or anything like that, but you know what they say, accidents happen. Anyway, large branch falls down, there's a crack, and in a way it was lucky, but it clipped the top of this beech, missed other bonsais very, very close to it. Beautiful junipers and cedars, and seemed to miss them. But this tree, the branch that came down, clipped the apex, and just tore it off. Ripped like the beautiful part of the apex that was really a shining light for me, I suppose, to keep this as the front. It took it off and knocked the tree off the bench, off the podium. Quite a tall podium, but didn't break the pot, thank God. Tree's tied in really well, and it survived the fall. The branches are quite flexible, but the apex just was the one area that really copped an absolute flogging. So, with that happening, I thought, well, it's still workable. Like it's a bit of a backward step, but the overall integrity of the design and what I was trying to achieve is still there. Like nothing's changed. The branches are in place, the trunk's in place, that nabari that I'm not happy with is still in place. So the apex is a bit barren. So it's all right. Like look to wire, look to move some branches around, which is typical. You just try to refill it and then allow for it to grow, and the apex becomes what it becomes. So I thought it's a setback, but it's not throw it out, get rid of it, it's been destroyed because the thing's been snapped in half. It's just like, okay, you've got maybe another 4 or 5 years of development with this tree. Fine, clean the cuts up, put some cut putty on them, make sure that everything's okay. But it wasn't. After that, like with the impact of the branch onto the bark, onto the cambium, swelling started to happen as well. So it wasn't just the healing of the wounds, it was also that whole area then started to take on this really distorted sort of feel to it. And if you look through the photos, you'll see that some of the top of the tree really started to get that reverse taper, and the cut, there was a large cut that was at the top of the tree when I acquired it, and the cambium was rolling over quite nicely and it would be quite insignificant, but that area that had been hit had been damaged, and therefore it was sort of pumping a lot of juice to that area, and the cambium rollover started to really take on this swelling. So while I was watching this tree thinking, rebuild the apex, put in all this work, do this, do that, I'm looking at the tree's structure, the trunk line, which can be hidden with foliage, definitely could be hidden with foliage, but if you know me, you'll know that I'm not interested in what the tree looks like in summer. I'm interested in what it looks like in winter for a deciduous. That's the aim of the game, is to have beautiful winter silhouette with lovely structure, and that's what I focus on. Good structure, good bonsai. Go back to almost, I reckon, episode 1 or 2 of the podcast, and I talk about it. It's part of the ethos of what I do. Anyway, so I look at this tree, and as it's healing and as it's growing, it's getting uglier and becoming more and more distorted. So I was starting to become less and less satisfied with this tree, to the point I'm thinking, I've got to do something. Something has to change. I will not have a tree in my collection that I'm not happy with, or I don't care if it's a cutting being put in the ground, but it's got to have a plan. It's got to have a path. It's got to have a vision for the future, and that vision for the future has to be, as you know, to be the best bonsai in the world. Whether it makes it or not, I don't care, but that's the thought process. And so I look at this thing day after day after day and think, is this meeting the expectations of what I want? And it's not. And I looked at the tree and I thought, I owe the tree to improve this, to change something, to make a bloody tough choice to fix things. Anyway, just so as it happened, where this beech is positioned on the podium, from the yard I look at the front of the tree, obviously. That's the way the podium's set up. But from my kitchen, I can look out the window, and this is the first tree that I see, and I see the back of the tree. So I would be sitting there making my coffee, getting ready for my morning stroll around the yard, and I'd be looking at it and I'd be going, actually, the back of the tree looks pretty nice. And then I'd be saying, that's right, remember the nabari? So then there was a bit of a daisy bush that was hiding it, so I broke off a few branches so I could see the lower part of the tree as well from the kitchen window, and I'd be looking at it going, I'd put my hand out and I'd cover up the top of the tree and I'd go, the bottom part of that tree looks bloody so much better. Like that nabari is really nice, and it's, the shape, the position of the branches. Yeah, sure, there's some branches that come around the wrong way, or that cover to give fill in the back of the tree, but they could be removed. And then I started looking at it from the top, thinking, if that ugly swelling was just removed and cut down a little bit, could I make that branch that's, down a little bit further on the tree, could that become the future apex of the tree? Could that be something that is the future? So then I start thinking about it, and for months, like literally months, I watched this thing go through the dropping of the leaves. A few leaves hang on to these things, but a lot of the leaves dropped off. And as it's barren through the latter part of autumn and into winter, the start of winter, I'm thinking, it's been 2 years since I repotted. Probably was going to go another year before getting repotted. But I've looked at it and thought, really, it probably needs to change. And what I'd also done is 2 years ago when this happened, I looked at the going through a rebuild phase for the tree, and beech older ones don't necessarily always back bud like they should. But I took a chance, and I'd cut it back hard. A lot of the length of the tree I'd cut back to try and force some budding, so I could improve structure of the tree and bring everything in nice and close because it got a bit long. And anyway, so I had this opportunity where there was these buds that had popped up around the place. I started looking at the back of the tree on a regular basis, saying, "Hey, this is potentially the front of the tree." And then I started looking at the top, thinking, okay, I could go backwards to go forwards. I could remove the top of the tree, and I could give it a nice cutback and start working on the front of the tree. So that leads us nicely into a little break, and I'll come back and I'll tell you what happened after that. Throughout the repotting season, there's different varieties, different species that wake up at different times. So therefore, there's different windows for the repotting. Some wake up nice and early, some are a bit slow. And for me, I knew that this beech is the last. It's very close to being the last in the collection. I know it's given me heart attacks before where I think, oh my God, is it going to survive? Has it died? But anyway, I can tell with this, the buds have started moving, but there was no urgency for my repot. And even though my window is for the July period to do my deciduous, having this thought in my head that I've got this redesign coming up on this thing as well, change of front, change of apex, I thought, I can just think about it. I don't have to rush. Like, I don't have to do it in the first week of July. I can really make sure that this is the right thing to do. So I'd always had in the back of my mind that I was going to repot it, but it would be one of the last, if not the last tree in my collection that I repot. So I worked my butt off repotting all the other stuff, like doing as much as I could, and every day I'd look at this tree, I'd walk past it, I reckon it's going to change. And knowing that the Nabari had upset me or disappointed me from day one, but I had a really great alternative, made me look at it completely differently, this tree. Like, I'd started seeing the front that was on the podium as the back of the tree. From that moment on, I thought, that's the back of the tree now. That's okay. Like, it's not ideal to have any part of the Nabari not being perfect, but by all means, you can tuck something that's ugly around the back and focus on the good part of the tree, like the beautiful part of the tree. So I started looking at this thing very, very differently, and I was repotting day after day after day, working my way through all the other trees, watching this. The buds were starting to swell on this thing. It started dropping the last lot of leaves that it was starting to hold around the tree as well. And I thought, it's getting closer. It's getting closer and closer to making a decision. So then I bought the beech into the workshop. I sat it down and I finished the last of my repotting. And I always work towards the last part of my repotting is to go through developmental stock. Stock that maybe I've stupidly planted seeds for, or taking cuttings of, or starting a root over rock, or it might be something that's sort of been a couple of years in a pot, but then I need to take it and put into a bigger pot. It's all that developmental stuff that I work on at the very last point. So I do the I was going to say the better trees, the more advanced trees get done sooner. make sure they're all perfect. And then the developmental stuff, I find that my mindset has to change because your focus is on the barry development and root structuring and maybe some quick, large trunk chops or something like that, maybe an angle change. So it's just a different mindset. So I don't like to chop and change when I'm working on finished trees or more refined trees, as opposed to those in development. Anyway, I don't know why I told you that, but anyway, that's just the way I do it. So this tree sat in the workshop for about a week, and I was just looking at it on the trolley. I had it on the turntable, so I would spin it around. I'd look at the original front, I'd look at the new front, I'd look at the original front, I'd look at the new front, and I'd be repotting other trees, getting them done, and then in between all those development trees, I'd be looking at it again, going, yep. I'd throw a towel over the top of the apex, going, that's what it's going to look like. I'd hold my thumb up over it from a distance and look, that's going to work, that's going to work. Anyway, lots of what ifs, lots of if this goes, what will this do? And because it's never, with this tree, as you'll see in the photos, it's never an exact thing. Like it's a bit of a gamble when you do it. Like it's an educated gamble, but is it like should it be this branch that becomes the apex? Should it be this one that becomes the apex? And if I do this, will I remove too much on one side of the tree, or will it work? Is it a better balance? Does there need to be thread grafting in the future? All these scenarios go through my head when I'm trying to work out this whole change. But I still kept coming back to my original plan. Rotate it around 180 degrees, maybe a little bit more than that to sort of bring things around. Look at removing a few branches that were covering the beautiful trunk that it had. Cut off the apex, reduce it down, and then start to work on the wound that's there. So that would mean reducing the height of the tree. So it went from about 1.3, 1.4 meters. Now, currently as it stands, it's at 1 meter exactly from the lip of the pot to the top of the foliage. It's exactly at 1 meter, which is great. Like it was probably getting a little bit tall. I wanted to bring it down a little bit. So I get out the reciprocating saw to lop off the top because it was quite thick and chunky. And again, you'll see the photos for this in the post. But then I was left with a big, ugly cut. And that's when I bring out the die grinder, because I wanted to smooth off the transition between the new apex and the next branch on top of the tree, and make it sort of feel more natural. Now, carving tools, this is what I want to talk about this part, is that carving tools aren't always for ripping the bejesus out of the trees and carving big holes. I find that using something, they can do that, but the die grinder for me, I find offers the opportunity for me to make a really smooth cut. When you work it very slowly and very delicately, I find it's far better than using branch cutters or knob cutters or anything like that to try and smooth off a large cut like this. Getting that carving tool in there, the machine carving tool, I can work that very delicately and get a nice, smooth, even transition, which means that the scarring is going to come over, hopefully, fingers crossed, not quite as ugly as what it was, and make sure that it's sort of going in the right direction. But you don't need to, with practice and with very steady hands and very delicate movement of something like a die grinder, which spins at a ridiculous speed, which can be disastrous, can be very damaging as well if it's used and it jumps and runs. But using it just very lightly, not putting a lot of pressure onto the cutting blade, you'll find that you can work large cuts like this and get it set. Anyway, so part of the process was to knock off the top, clean up the wound, make sure it's going to have a nice transition, then start looking at pruning, bringing things back so the overall silhouette of the tree is far more pleasing because you've dropped it down, so therefore everything that's down lower is wider because the tree used to be a hell of a lot higher. So start cutting everything back in. And also I 100% accept that this tree isn't finished. This is just a step in the process. By reducing and taking out that big ugly lump, doesn't mean that I'm finished and I can sit back and have a rest and go, yeah, nice job. It's now the work begins or continues. I have to still develop more on the tree, but I could give it a nice good prune now, start lightening the structure, work on the taper of the branches, start bringing the silhouette back in, and I get to repot it. 2 years, it's a good time to repot. Could have gone 3 years, could have gone 4 years, but for me, with this change, I thought perfect. You've looked at it for the last 2 years. Now it's time to fix things, to correct the issues that had happened, and turn an accident into a real future benefit for the tree. Something that that I smile when I look at again. So I got to reduce the root ball. Had to work on the rotation, get that spot on, so the nabari, the branch positioning, the apex, everything sort of falls into line with what I wanted. But you'll see when it comes to tie-in and pot preparation for repotting, I've got a bit of. I'll admit I'm a bit OCD with it. I love having it perfect, that pot prep, and you can. Like a lot of things we do with bonsai, you can prep a pot however you want. As long as it has the functionality, it's like wiring your tree. As long as it has the functionality, you'll get there. But there's a way to make it look beautiful as well. Or for me, anyway, you never look. Once a tree's wired in, you're never going to look under the pot again. But I take great pride and satisfaction when I do put in the tie-in wires and I do put in the mesh and the mesh tie-ins, that it looks beautiful. It's it's the best I possibly can do, because that whole approach flows through everything I do with bonsai. It's, sure you can cut corners. Yeah, sure you can jam it in there and you can tie it in so it looks like a dog's breakfast. And sure it'll do the job. And sure no one will ever see it. But I'll know. I know. And every single tree, it doesn't matter if it's mine or someone else's that I work on that I do this for, I do it exactly the same way. Exactly the same way. And I encourage everybody to approach your bonsai with that mindset of perfection in everything that you do. And just the little things, it's the 1%ers that make such a big difference over time. Getting that tie-in wire to sit perfectly flush at the bottom of the pot means that when you tie it in, it's not going to move. There's no flex. Having a slight sag in it or not being perfect, you'll tie the tree in. Yeah, sure, it'll be okay. It'll be fine for now, but then somewhere down the track, that's going to loosen up. It's going to flex. It's going to give, and the tree won't be tied in quite as neatly or as securely as what it could have been. So, I am fastidious with it. And the last step, once I'd put it in and put the soil in there and got the positioning right, work in the soil and sit back and pat myself on the back with a smile from ear to ear, like a cat that's just eaten the canary, watching it going, that's exactly what I wanted, And the last thing was to go through and just remove a few of the branches. Like there's one down low you'll see that sort of was starting to cross the trunk, which for the original design was no issue whatsoever. But this design, remove that plus a few things up further. Then do some wound repair on this thing, get on the cut paste on it. Because it's fairly large, the one at the top, the wood is quite soft in the middle, but just do the best I possibly can with sealing it. And I do have a preference to always use cut paste or cut putty, based on the size of the cut. If it's bigger than a pencil, or even maybe say your little finger, if it's bigger than your little finger, then use it. If, I've heard arguments that it doesn't work, there's useless, the tree will do what it's going to do regardless. Yeah, but what if it does? What if it does make a difference? It's that Band-Aid. You cut yourself, you put a Band-Aid on it, the wound heals faster. That's the same thought that goes through my head every time I put cut paste or cut putty onto a tree. It's like a Band-Aid. It's going to provide a waterproof membrane. It's going to stop the water getting in there and rotting it. It's going to stop fungal issues starting to occur and getting into the core of the tree. It's going to provide an environment where the tree will heal over, which, sure, it may well have healed over already by itself, but I'm providing a waterproof area, which means the wood underneath doesn't rot, which means it doesn't go soft, which means that cambium can roll over nicely and seal up eventually over time. So that's one of the last steps in the physical process for this tree. But then after it was all done, after it's watered in, the sphagnum had been put on the tree, I'm pleased, I'm very happy. The next part, then the most important part for this whole process for me, was to sit down and start reworking the plan. Get the old plan, scrap it, start thinking on the new one. All right, so what am I going to do? How does this tree go from here to the next level? What other major decisions do I have to do? There's a large thick branch that's sort of halfway up on the left hand side of the tree. That's very. It doesn't fit with the tree. The angle of the branch, the thickness of the branch. So it's like, okay, that's on the list. There's smaller sub buds coming off that, which will allow me to get some nice movement, get some growth. Do I need to cut it off right now? No, I don't. Definitely don't need to cut it off now. But it's on the plan. It's on the future of this tree. All right. So clearly, the apex, the back side of the tree needs a bit more. The new backside of the tree needs a bit more work when it comes to, growth and branches and structure and, ramification. Cool, easy, that's done. That's about, another 5 years. But I had 5 years planning with the old front anyway and not being happy with the tree. Now I'm bloody stoked with the tree. I'm really happy with how it's developing and I've got work to do. So it's not a finished tree that I can go, that's boring. It's just maintenance now. It's not. Every time this thing grows, it's like, okay, do I let this grow? Do I come in there? Do I stop that growth? Do I ramify? Do I extend? Do I thicken? Do I maintain thickness? And it's nice. It's exciting for me to have trees like that in my collection that I can work on because I look at this tree and I'm really excited by the future of it. Like now it's got something to look forward to. Is it everyone's cup of tea? No, I wouldn't think so. Is there things that you'd change on it? I guarantee there is. But my approach to bonsai is not about what other people think, it's what you think. And for me, I would look if someone else put this tree up, I would look at it and in my mind I'd go, okay, I would do this and this and I would change it. Cool. But I look at this tree and go, I will do this and this, but it's not now. It's like it's part of the plan over the next 5, 10, 100 years of this tree's development that I will have those things and work on them, and I'll be very happy. Bonsai is about putting a smile on your face, about making you want to get out and spend time with your trees, and now this tree, thanks to that gum tree dropping its branch and smashing its apex so many years ago. Now I look at this tree and think, that's brilliant. I'm really excited about this tree and I love the future of it. And I think that we can, for me, it's, I've talked about forced redesigns before and, you can't change what you can't change. But in this instance, with this particular tree, I'm actually glad that it happened. I'm actually excited because I wouldn't say I didn't have the guts to do what this branch falling down had done. But you get comfortable, you get complacent with your trees, and this is where going to do workshops or seeing other people or having your bonsai network. I talked about it a lot, and getting that separate set of eyes look at your tree, not to bag you out and say, oh, that's crap, that's rubbish, but just to look at it and maybe you might know something has to happen with the tree. You might have a gut feeling that if I did this would happen and that would be better and whatever. But just getting that little bit of confidence or that reassurance to think about things differently, I think that's where it works. And sometimes it takes a large branch falling onto your bonsai before you get kicked into gear and make changes that certainly make you happier and make your bonsai a lot better as well. Well, thank you for your company, folks. Truly appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed that little tale about the European Beech. That certainly makes me smile a lot more now. Anyway, I hope that it provides some kind of positivity when something negative happens. There's two ways you can look at it. You can cry away into your wheat bix, or you can pick up the pieces and start moving on. And the great thing about bonsai is that you don't have to do things there and then. Like we are a blip on these trees' life. Like they are designed to be around for a hell of a lot longer than what we are. As spring shows you, that renewal, rejuvenation. So don't rush into things. By all means, seek advice. Don't have to do it straight away. Leave it sitting in front of you for a week, 2 weeks, a month. Leave it for 2 years, like I have, maybe even longer than that. I've contemplated making changes to this tree, but never done it. Always been comfortable with things, and I like this part of the podcast where you get to see someone who's a bonsai professional who does this for a living, who flounders at times. It sits there, looks at their tree, and thinks about it over and over and over. And I'm just like you when it comes to my trees. I love them dearly. I hold them very close to my heart, and it does get hard. It does get hard to make those tough decisions. So when something like this happens, it's maybe a blessing, maybe not, but it's an opportunity to change things. The tree doesn't stop. Your bonsai doesn't stop being your bonsai just because something changes on it. A branch dies during winter and spring comes around. You go, oh, that's a shame. That was a great branch. Whatever, grow another branch. It's the journey. It's not the destination. It's what we get out of them along the way that makes them make us better people, I suppose. Anyway, thanks for listening in. Love it as always. Next time you hear me, it'll be spring. Woohoo! Cannot wait for that. Looking forward to some warmth. Not looking forward to the grass growing quicker than it is at the moment, but that's part of the process. Make sure you're getting ready for feeding. That's coming up very, very quickly with the trees. We've got to be on top of it. Everything starts again. You might be putting away the repotting tools, but you're getting out your pruning scissors and getting ready for your spring plan. Might be a nice time to sit down and review your trees before they do pop and go crazy over the next few weeks to make sure that you're on track with what you want to do. Whether you're going to harness the energy and grow sacrifice branches, develop branches, thicken them, or whether you're going to be pruning for ramification. Make sure you get that part right now before you miss that chance. Anyway, give them a cuddle for me, and until next time, as always, happy bonsai.